Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. I'm Councillor Flagg, the Chairman of the Licensing, and the first item on the agenda is to elect chairs for this meeting. Can I have a proposition from the floor, please? Members?
Chairman, Councillor Flagg, I think it should be yourself chairs this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Item 2 on this morning's agenda, apologies. Can I just check with the clerk that we have no apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. No apologies today.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Can I ask each member of the subcommittee, do they have any declarations of interest with regards to this morning's agenda? Councillor Kelsey.
None from me, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Farquhar.
Likewise, none from me, Chair.
And I will ask Councillor Dove, who's the reserve member this morning. Councillor Dove.
Now confirm no declarations of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Dove. Item 4 on this morning's agenda, the revised protocol for virtual meetings, which is included in the agenda. Are members happy that we note that that's in the agenda?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Councillor Kelsey?
Agreed, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 5.
Sorry, Chairman, Nikki from Democratic Services. Did you want to go through the housekeeping before we move on to item 5?
Sorry, Nicola, have I missed it on my sheet?
Sorry.
Oh, yes, do beg your pardon. Members, just to run through, members and participants of this morning's meeting, I'll just run through the housekeeping measures with regards to formal Skype meetings. Please note that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee is being recorded by the Council for broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a maximum of 6 months, or minimum of 6 months, sorry. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. State your name before you speak if you have not been introduced by name. Mute your microphone when you are not talking. After each party has made their representation, the Chairman will ask each person in turn if they have any questions or comments. However, if at any point you would like to speak again, please type RTS, that is request to speak, in the instant message conversation panel on the bottom left hand side of your screen and click to arrow button to send. Please note this panel is visible to all parties. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. We then move on then to item 5 on this morning's agenda, objection to temporary event notice, Drink to Doors, stroke JA Drinks Limited. I will now ask each participant to introduce themselves and state their role. So I'll start with myself. I am Councillor Flagg, the elected chairman for this morning's this morning's subcommittee and a member of the committee. Councillor Farquhar.
Councillor George Farquhar, member of the subcommittee.
Thank you. Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Dave Kelsey. I'm also a member of the subcommittee.
And Councillor Dove.
Yes, thank you. I'm the reserve member for today's licensing committee.
Thank you, Councillor Dove. Mrs. Linda Cole.
Sorry, there was a problem there with my mic. I'm Linda Cole, the legal advisor for today's meeting.
Thank you, Linda. Nikki Hooley.
Hello, Nikki Hooley, Democratic Services Officer, and I'll be clerking today's meeting.
Mrs. Sarah Rogers.
Hello, yes, Sarah Rogers, Senior Licensing Officer.
Thank you, Sarah. Marianne Brown.
Hello, Marianne Brown. I'm representing J&A Drinks and Drinks to Door.
Thank you, Marianne. Mr. Anthony Horton.
Hello there. My name's Anthony Horton. I'm the Managing Director from J&A Drinks. I have Marianne representing me, who is a personal licence holder.
Thank you. And Sergeant Gosling.
Sergeant Gosling, Drug and Alcohol Harm Reduction Team, here with Louise Basfield, Licensing Officer.
Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you, Louise. In addition, Democratic Service Officers are providing technical support to the meeting, but they will take no part in the hearing. Before I run through the procedures, please may I check that all persons who have given notice of their intention to speak have been identified, and any person who wishes to withdraw a representation or wishes not to speak has been identified. If there are no comments, I will take this as correct. Thank you. I will now explain the proposed procedure and order of speaking for the hearing as follows. The licensing officer presents the report. The applicant will make their application. Questions of the applicant by all parties, members of the committee, subcommittee to go first. Responsible authorities and other persons will make their representations. Questions of the responsible authorities and other persons, members of the committee, subcommittee, once again to go first. All parties will be given an opportunity to sum up, with the party who spoke last to go first. The hearing will then conclude. The subcommittee will deliberate in private with legal advisor and notification of the subcommittee's decision will be given within a period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held, in accordance with the regulations. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. I will now ask all parties to confirm agreement on the proposed procedure or make representations. Mrs. Rogers, are you happy?
Yep, I'm happy.
Marianne Brown?
Yes, I'm happy.
Thank you. Anthony Horton?
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Sergeant Gosling?
Yeah, all understood.
Thank you. Finally, please may I remind all parties speaking not to repeat the information which has already been given in writing, but to expand on their written representations. All questions are to be asked through the chairman, and there will be no cross-examination of parties. Before I ask the licensing officer to present the report, may I just explain that the report details 3 identical 10 applications, just covering 3 separate periods of time. But as the application and police objection for each of the dates is the same, then we are only going to ask to hear from the applicant and police once. Would the licensing officer please present the report? Thank you.
Thank you. 3 temporary event notices by Mr. Anthony Horton are brought before you following an objection to each of the notices from Dorset Police, as they believe the premises user is unable to uphold any of the licensing objectives, in particular the prevention of crime and disorder. The notices have been applied for to permit the activity of an alcohol delivery service from J&A Drinks Limited, as this is the location where alcohol is appropriated to the contract made by Drinks to Doors and their customers. To clarify, the place where the order for alcohol or payment for it takes place may not be the same as the place where the authorization is required. It is where the alcohol is selected and set apart for delivery to the purchaser. This activity was taking place from the premises without the necessary authorization, following the closure of unlicensed premises due to the COVID-19 to enable customers to have alcohol delivered directly to them. Once notified, trading ceased, and measures were put in place to remedy the situation by way of a new premises licence application, which is currently going through its 28-day consultation period, and these tends to carry them through said consultation period. Members must consider the objection notice and supporting evidence and either grant the application or issue counter notices if considered necessary for the promotion of a licensing objective to do so. Now, please note, I've made a small error in my report, and I noticed this morning. Reference to crime prevention licensing objective should be replaced with a licensing objective. This would be the case for any reference to that. So apologies for the error. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Did members have any questions for the officer at all? Councillor Kelsey?
Yes, please, Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, Mrs. Rogers, could you just tell me, please, when you spoke to the applicants with regard to cease doing what they were doing, were they compliant, and did you have confidence that they were making a genuine mistake?
Yes, I spoke to Marianne Brown, and she is an experienced licensee, and she was under the assumption that JNR Drinks had license for off sales. When I spoke to Mr. Horton, he thought that was authorised by way of his wholesale registration, and didn't appreciate that there was a difference between the two.
Okay. Looking through the management plan that they have, would you as a licensing officer be happy with that? It seems quite comprehensive.
It does go over and beyond what is required for a temporary event notice. As you know, there are no conditions attached to a temporary event notice unless you're attaching conditions to an existing licence. So it is unusual for an applicant to supply extra information, but that would be as a result of the police objection in their attempt to mediate.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Farquhar, did you have questions for the officer at all?
Thank you, Chair. None at this time.
Thank you very much. Can I then move forward and ask the applicant to address the committee in support of their application, please? Would that be Marianne or Mr. Horton?
Excuse me, Chairman.
Hello, it's me, Marianne. I'll be representing J&A Drinks on the licensing objectives.
Excuse me, Chairman. May I speak?
Yes, Councillor Kelsey.
We'll be hearing from the police first, Chairman. Chairman, you're muted.
Can I just check with the officers? I understand it was the application that we were looking at. It was the applicant to speak first, am I correct?
I think it might be useful for the applicant to speak first, then we can hear exactly what is proposed and how they're going to run the off-sale business before they get their premises licence.
Thank you, Linda. I'm sure that when I was looking at the information, I'm sure that it was the applicant to speak first on this occasion. Are members happy that we move forward with that? That the applicant speaks first? Councillor Kelsey?
Yes, Chairman, if that's how you want to do it, that's fine.
Happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Could I then call on Marianne to address the committee, please?
Hello, committee. My name is Marianne Brown. I've been working in the licensed trades for over 20 years. And when the COVID-19 pandemic happened, I was working with J&A and we came up with a solution to potentially be able to continue trading. They have a large warehouse that's full of stocks that's perishable. So we came up with the concept. I've obviously been using them for my festivals, my bars, my events for many years, and absolutely no circumstance didn't think we weren't allowed to be able to deliver to the public. 2 weeks ago, I had a phone call from Sarah Rogers explaining that the licence in place isn't allowing us to do so. We immediately ceased trading. We talked about the ways moving forward, putting a temporary event notice in place to get us up and running again, and then obviously to apply for the premises licence, and obviously then waiting for us to come through. I thought it'd be a good demonstration of our ability to be able to uphold the full licensing objectives with a full AMP and driver's training manual as well. So we're hoping obviously we can then work to make sure and ensure that none of the license objectives are not upheld to. We obviously work within the law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask members, do they have any questions for Marianne at all?
I have a couple, Chairman.
Councillor Kelsey.
Yeah. Good morning, Marianne. Thank you for joining the meeting this morning. When your drivers deliver to these people, how are they going to check that the person that placed the order is the person that is going to receive the goods?
Yes, of course. We have done a driver's training manual on top of the AMP, which gives them clear instructions. We have like a sub box that's actually on the delivery note, and it states on there if ID is required, they need to do so. Obviously, making sure there's distancing of meter distance, they can see it is. On knocking the door or ringing the doorbell, they ask the person's name. If the name is correct on the delivery note, they then can deliver it. Most of the people that we are delivering to are people that we actually know, and we know they're over the age of 18, over the legal age. But if not, we are operating a challenge 25 to make sure we uphold them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But what I'm thinking is, if they're paying by credit card, then we know they're over 18 because you have to be 18 to hold a credit card. But debit cards are available to anyone that has a bank account. Now, if I order online and I'm paying by debit card, I could tell you, yes, I'm 18. But when the delivery comes to the door, it could be a totally different person that receives it. And I'm just concerned that an adult may pay for it online, but how do we know that it's the same person that pays for it that is actually going to receive it? What is your requirements to prove that at the door?
Okay, within the obviously AMP, when the orders are taken, they're taken directly through me, and I'd say a good 90+% of the people that are coming through are on Facebook Messenger, which we actually look and see the age of the person. If for any reason or any doubt that I personally would have as a license holder, I put a note on there for the driver to follow to make sure a driving license or
We appear to have lost Marianne, unfortunately.
We do.
Thank you very much, Richard. So we'll just adjourn the meeting while officers try and see if they can get Marianne back online to join us once more. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Welcome back, members. Welcome back, Marianne. I'm glad that you've now got a connection. I believe, Councillor Kelsey, you were in the process of asking a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mary. I'm glad you're back with us. We were just talking about making sure that the right person is collecting the delivery once it's delivered. And I think reading through your book while we had that short break there, I think I'm quite happy with that. What is going to be your limit on sales? Are you actually having a limit as to how much alcohol can be delivered at any one time?
We haven't had a situation where I believe there's been too much ordered. People are buying pretty much once every couple of weeks, enough to see them through rather than having the risk of going to the supermarket. And most of the people that we've had, I think I've come back online again. Hold on 1 second, and I need to be able to see me. I've definitely come back in. 1 second. Hello, maybe I think. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ah, marvellous. Let me put my camera on.
Ah, brilliant. Yeah.
So sorry. Technical stuff at this end. It's not so good. Sorry, what was the question again? Can we half started and then start?
Sorry, Marianne. I was just asking about how you were going to control the amount of alcohol that went to any one particular person.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't at present had anybody ordering the sort of amounts I would be concerned about. People are rather ordering a larger amount to see them through this period rather than having to go to the supermarket. And I believe what we're selling is not anything too worrying. If someone's going to order loads of Alco Pops or things that I thought were, worrying, I would obviously then would stop it. But most people are ordering some wines and some beers to see them through this period.
Okay. Just one further one, Chairman, if I may, is on your schedule, I noticed that anyone that orders up till 2 p.m. will get their delivery that day. Are you sure that you are able to not deliver? What I'm thinking of is, somebody's having a few people round when they shouldn't be, and suddenly at 5 o'clock in the evening they think, oh, we're running out of beer for tonight, we need it delivered. Could you guarantee to me that that is not going to happen?
Absolutely, 100% yes. We don't operate that way. We're a delivery service that helps people out, stock up, ready for a couple of weeks to keep their stuff in the house. We do not deliver after that point. We only offer the same day delivery, so we try and get orders done first thing in the morning to get them out for all the day. But then depends how far away someone is. If they live further afield, then it's going to be the next day or the following day. But we're not a quick late night delivery service. It's going to drop off bottles of vodka. That's not something we are entertaining. It's more wine, beers down that route.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Thank you, Marianne. Councillor Farquhar, did you have any questions for Marianne at all?
I did, Chair. Thank you very much, Marianne. You certainly seem very confident. Obviously, a sign of your 20-odd years in the licensing trade. I do have some questions. It's a curious one because obviously with your business being wholesales, then off sales and deliveries, etc., are not your normal stock and trade. Or should I say the business's stock and trade. My first question is just for clarification. What date did you start the off sales, and at what date did you finish? I know there was a misunderstanding as regards your ability to do off sales, but can we just verify exactly what dates you started and finished when you're notified by the licensing officer?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Councillor. We started talking about this right at the end of March. I went to see Anthony and John over at the warehouse, and they obviously were panicking and worrying with the fact that they have a warehouse full of perishable stock that was going to obviously go in the bin if we didn't come up with it. It was the beginning of April. I haven't got the actual dates, but it was the first week in April we started. And then it was the end of April when Sarah had called me to ask about the license. But the minute we found out that the license we had wasn't the correct one, we stopped immediately, and we've been working directly with licensing to make sure we remedy it and get it right.
Thank you for that. So we would say 3 to 4 weeks then.
Yeah, about 3 weeks, I'd say.
Okay, so you've got a fair amount of experience with your customers. Can I ask how many drivers you've got?
We have only, at the present time, only used a couple of drivers. We haven't had the demand of large amounts going out. We have capacity to be able to sell more if it did get busier. But we're more of a, the service is there. It's not multiple service. It's just a nice service to do locally for local people to stay in and not have to go to the supermarket.
So can I just clarify, that's 2 drivers, and were they already employed by the company?
Yes, they were.
Thank you. Now I see that you've got a training record sheet for the drivers, which explains what the process is that you expect them to carry out for each delivery. Do you have to your record how many deliveries have actually been completed in that 3-week period by each driver?
Well, we have only been using 2 drivers, of which most of the time it has been the directors, which is Anthony and John, have been out with the drivers with it. The amount of orders we put through, we're probably doing sort of 5 to 10 orders per day. At the start, probably 1 to 3 orders each day. Then it started getting busier as we were progressing, and obviously we stopped. But we have kept people in the knowledge that we are looking at our license at the moment. We will let them know if we're allowed to continue. We'll go back to them and let them know that we can start again.
Okay, that's useful to know. When were the training records actually put together and signed off?
The training I went through with John and Anthony right at the start. The actual documentation was done probably a couple of weeks in, but I went in and went through strictly with John, Anthony and the other drivers that were there, how we're going to operate and how we're going to do this. So all this was implemented even before we were asked to do it.
Thank you. I know there's a fair list of questions here, and I really appreciate that you're on top of it and you've got the answers appropriate. So it's just to clarify, because as I say, it's not the normal business of the company itself, and it's not essentially something which I've come across before. So I just want to be quite clear in my mind. So I really appreciate you answering these questions, and I know there's a fairly long list of them. How many refusal registries are carried, and actually have you had any incidents where you've had a refusal?
The registers that we've had books in the van right from the start. At present, we haven't had any situation we had refusals. Most of the deliveries in the daytime, most of them are for older people that want their wines rather than having to go to the shop. We haven't had that situation yet, but the registers are in place if they're required.
Thank you so much for that. Now, it was an interesting point which Councillor Kelsey brought up, which was the direct debit and at what age you can actually obtain one. So as opposed to a credit card. I wasn't quite clear on your reply, because you talked about Facebook age verification, but I think we're all aware that Facebook, you can put any date of birth in for Facebook. So I'm not quite clear that with a direct debit payment, exactly how it is that you verify. And I'm interested because on the driver's record sheet from the order, on the order sheet, there will be a check ID tick box. Yes, that's what it says, or words to that effect. So how with a direct debit payment, sorry, not a direct debit, a debit card, my mistake, a debit card, do you actually verify? Because looking at somebody's posted age on Facebook doesn't seem like a valid way to verify somebody's age.
There is a procedure that follows through. I would say at the present time, where it's a very new business, we've been marketing through my social media channels and also Anthony's channels too. Most of the people I've been selling to, I know them personally. I've been running bars, restaurants for years. Most of them are older people. I'm 44 years old. Most of my friends are in their 40s and 50s. And anybody that I don't know who they are, you can go back in, see their profile. You can screen through and see what sort of interest in. You can understanding how old that person is. I have had 2 people I've had to ask them to send the ID through, and they just did it with a FaceTime where we logged on and talked to each other. But apart from that, I pretty much know most of the people at present that we're selling to.
I appreciate your knowledge and experience of your customer base, but my concern for the licensing objectives to be upheld is to ensure that the Challenge 25 is actually upheld. So is there a record of the mechanism that you actually do with this FaceTime that you have? Because because you repeatedly say you know most of the customers, but we need to actually verify that all of the customers are actually of an appropriate age. And can you then expand on how many orders have gone out whereby it's check ID, which is on the actual order sheet with an instruction to the driver, whereby the driver has had to check the ID at that location?
There's only been, so far in the just under 3 weeks we were operating, there's only been 2 people that I weren't aware of. I asked them if we could FaceTime so I could actually physically see their faces, and we were talking like we are now. So I know, looking at him, the same as they came into my bar or restaurant, you know by looking at someone if they're under the age of 25. If they're not, you're going to operate a Challenge 25. I haven't had anybody at present that I believe is under the age of 25 and had to follow the procedure. But if I did, there would have to be them holding up their license card. And when the drivers get to the house, they have to verify themselves, the name and the card again.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that answer. I do appreciate it. My other concern is quantities. You know, you mentioned that people are buying to see them through for a couple of weeks, etc. Can you give me the largest order and the smallest order that you had? Because I don't know what somebody views is for their personal consumption that is suitable for 2 weeks. I mean, you've been in the licensing trade for quite a period of time, but I think just for my satisfaction, if you can give me the largest order that was placed, and perhaps it's breakdown by bottles of spirits, beers, etc., which you said wines and beers are your principal, but give me the largest order, please, because you'll have a record for that. No?
Yes, absolutely. The largest order we've done has gone to Highcliffe, and it was for a lady that buys for all her relatives that are at home. So she ordered about £400 worth of wines and some beers, some soft drinks, because then she is making sure the people that are children, she then delivers to them in the area. Highcliffe, obviously, being a bit further afield. Her order was about just under £400. Smallest order, we have a minimum order of £30 just to make it worthwhile us actually delivering it. So generally, it's going to deter anybody that wants to order a bottle of something. We encourage them to say, get some beers, some soft drinks, some wine. So it's more that sort of thing.
So with this 400, thank you very much for that. With this £400 order, what mechanisms did you put in place to ensure that? Because does this not sound like a proxy sale if they're buying for other people they're actually shielding? What mechanisms did you put in place to verify that for who the alcohol was being bought for this £400 order were actually of the correct age?
I physically know her. Her name's Georgie Smith. I've known her for probably about 15, 20 years, and I know exactly who she is. I know her family. I know where the order was going, and I know what she was having and what she was doing.
Thank you for that. So what was the largest order for somebody that you didn't know?
I haven't really done large orders if I don't know. People that I know who they are and what they're ordering from. Like I said, I know good 80+% of the people that are ordering who they are, and we have conversations as to where they're at, how they're coping with the lockdown, you know, making sure they're safe. And they think the service is brilliant to save them having to go out, making sure their relatives are safe, making sure they're not having to go to the shop. It was a service we are trying to provide to help with what's going on, and also help, obviously, John and Anthony with all their stock not going into the bin as well.
Thank you for that. I've certainly, thank you, Chair. I'm sorry for this long list of questions, but essentially I wanted to have the confidence, having not experienced this particular type of trade before, and it certainly seems to be a very worthwhile exercise to actually help people that are shielding, etc., to meet their alcohol requirement needs. Now, I'm a little bit curious as regards what stock actually goes off, because it's beers and alcohol which are stored in bottles and cans. I'm not really too sure as regards the shelf life. I know very different to the shelf life of a cask of ale that you'd normally supply to a ferment. So can you just verify, you know, what shelf life this is, or what stock is going off that the company was concerned that they have to get out there?
Would you like me to speak, Marianne? Or?
Yes, certainly.
This is Anthony. So most beers, most bottled beers, have about 6 months life. So some of which we purchase in large quantities to get the best price, and we bought that months before. So some of it is coming close to date. Probably I'd say probably about £10,000-20,000 worth was questionable whether it's going to go out of date or not, and it might well go out of date in the future if we don't manage to sell it. Basically, that's it. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. I'm Anthony. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, just one last question. One of the concerns which I had, and it's always a little bit difficult when you read the written submissions and the actual case itself, I've got a lot more confidence, Chair, in the actual answers which I'm getting. But a scenario when I was reading through the paperwork that occurred to me is that in your sheet for instructions to drivers it's to leave the box by the door, ring the bell, step back 2 meters, and then verify with the individual. My concern there, if that somebody was intoxicated, is that it's kind of difficult to recover the goods, because essentially what you're saying is, in the first instance, if the person is intoxicated, do not leave the delivery with them, and if they become abusive, then to not to call the police. What concerns? How do you come to this mindset for the refusals if somebody's already intoxicated, that actually mechanically it could work? I understand from your refusal registries that you have no entries, but surely the demands on the police are quite high at this moment in time, and if they have to be called to a intoxicated resident who is trying to hold on to a delivery from your company, how robust do you believe that your mechanisms are in place to ensure that alcohol is not supplied to an intoxicated person?
Thank you. We at present have not had any scenarios like this whatsoever. We are delivering to families and people that are shielding and staying at home. So we have not had anybody we've had this situation is. We put that procedure in place if this was to happen. But realistically, the safety of our drivers is paramount to make sure they come back. And if need be, then obviously then we'd phone the police. But I don't see this being something that will happen. I can't imagine it to happen with the style of what we're doing, who we're selling to, and how we're operating.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for your indulgence for those questions. It's a bit of a learning curve for me. And Marianne, thank you so much for the openness and the experience which you shared in your replies there. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. I've had an RTS from Councillor Kelsey, but I'm not sure how old that is, Councillor Kelsey. Did you?
Chairman, it was okay. Councillor Farquhar asked the question that I was going to answer. No need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marianne, I just have one question. Looking at your delivering procedures, second point says, we do not leave the delivery with anyone except the person that is verified over the age of 18 and that ordered, which you explained to Councillor Farquhar that you check the ID. Do you check the card that was used at the point of sale? If you don't, is it something that you could add into your procedures, do you think?
We haven't done it yet. We're more than happy to add into procedure if you're more comfortable with it.
Well, my experience with purchasing goods recently is that if you turn up to the point of sale, they like to check that you are the card holder, and I think that might be a good idea, that if you are delivering to to places where there's a possibility of proxy sales, then the proof of the sales card would be a good idea. Are there any further questions at all, members? No.
Thank you.
Can I just then ask Sergeant Gosling, do you have any questions for the applicant at all?
Yes, I do, Chair. Just a couple of points of clarity, please.
Firstly,
in relation to the dates for the operation of drinks to doors, we note from the social media, in fact, it wasn't the beginning of April, or indeed the middle of April that it started. It was the towards 21st of March. Is that correct? Could you just clarify that for Marianne?
Hello, Gareth. We set the social media plan, the pages up to start marketing. We didn't physically have any orders until the beginning of April, but you have to do marketing for people to understand what you're doing first of all. And it wasn't until probably, I think it was the 29th or 30th of April, the first call came through with it might have been that or beginning at the start of April, but it was a good couple of weeks marketing before anybody started to know who we were and how we were operating.
Thank you, Marianne. Sergeant Gosling?
Yeah. Okay, but the marketing requirement then, you said that it's marketing for different customers, but then in another take, they're customers that you already know. So I wouldn't have thought it would require that level of marketing if it's the people you've known and been in the business with for some time.
With the lockdown, didn't really start getting implemented till the end of March. People already had their alcohol they'd gone to the shops and bought. Obviously, when the lockdown actually happened, it was the end of March where people started to think differently about the way they were buying. So it didn't start getting busy, or anybody really started to call until the end of March, beginning of April.
Okay. Another thing, so you mentioned about you verifying the ID on Skype or Facebook Messenger, some method that you can speak to them. Are you one of the drivers that will be able to verify then the ID when you actually get to see the person? So I'm just wondering what that connection would be.
I would, if I have any concerns about the person that we are delivering to, I put a large note in the sub comments when we put the order through to the drivers. So if there's a concern from my end, being the licensee, I would put a note saying you need to get identification of this person. We haven't had many situations where pretty much most of the people I know, they're in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They're not necessarily, they're not kids buying drinks and we're worried about it so much. But if we get to the point that we do have customers that we don't know, obviously we will make sure the Challenge 25 is put in place and will be implemented with the drivers verifying the actual ID with the correct name at entry at the door before delivering.
Okay. We talked about it briefly at the start in relation to your experience as a personal license holder. I don't think this has been addressed to the committee necessarily, but in relation to this period that you operated without a license, did you not think that it was prudent as a personal license holder to check, verify that there is a license in existence and to check the conditions of that license that you would consider to be present?
I've been using JNA as a company for over 20 years to events, festivals, bars, nightclubs. Why would, and understandably, why would I think any differently that I wasn't allowed to do this? I mean, there's absolutely categorically wouldn't have operated if I thought the license wasn't correct. And in now looking back, obviously I should have looked more into it, but it's not something, I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize my personal license or do anything that would be against licensing law.
I guess from my point of view, I would expect any personal license holder who's embarking on a new project or anything to do with alcohol sales, one of the key parts of being a licensee would be to check the license to which you're operating under and to ensure that what it is you're doing, whatever activity you're doing, is compliant with that license, just to ensure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So I guess that that to me does and has caused me concern. So in relation, I think I'm still going to potentially be concerned about, and I'll talk about it in my submission, but I think we could do with a bit more clarity, perhaps maybe in the summing up with regards to the ID verification, because I think that's one of the key areas here of concern. And just finally, could you possibly just clarify something in relation to the, one of the things what you've seen on social media is in relation to the magnum of Grey Goose that was given away, and I'm not sure that particularly at this difficult time in the country that giving away a significant quantity of alcohol is particularly a sort of essential travel of delivering that to somebody. Can that be clarified for the committee, please?
Yeah, of course. We run a competition to win a bottle of vodka that people could share after they come down a lockdown. So we ask them to tag 4 of their friends into the post for them to share it with. One bottle of vodka maximum size for one person is not right. But if they're sharing it with 4 people after lockdown, it's something to look forward to. It obviously helped us with marketing to share it around. I don't see that being a problem.
I think with respect, I think it's difficult to control the consumption and to demand that it's going to be consumed by 4 people. But I think by then introducing more customers, then again increases that number of people that you're not familiar with as far as customers and people that are consuming. So I think that again builds into the serving to people that you don't necessarily know, which is part and parcel with this type of business, I accept. One further point, can I just ask whether since you've been notified of the lack of license and indeed up till today's process, could I ask whether either Drinks to Doors or indeed J&A Drinks have supplied any alcohol, please, to anyone either on a residential basis or indeed a commercial basis, as far as supplying other businesses?
Hello there. This is Anthony speaking. I have got an AWRS which allows me to supply to the licensed trade. I have continued supplying the licensed trade only. We also run a gas company which sells beer gas for the licensed trade as well. We absolutely have not supplied to any residential addresses. Thank you. I'll just pass you on to Marianne.
Yeah, I'll clarify that. On Sarah telling us we were not permitted to continue operating until the license was in place, I have done not one order to anybody through Drinks to Doors. Wouldn't do anything to jeopardise the chance of getting the license put in place.
Okay. So have there been any orders with regards to a wholesale aspect? I'm just thinking that given the fact that we're in lockdown, I'd be surprised if anyone's ordering anything on a wholesale basis.
Yes, so we do supply to the off-license. So, for example, Westbourne Wines in Westbourne. There we supply him. So we do supply a few off-licenses like Bonafide Wines also in Christchurch. We've known them guys for many years, and they are fully licensed. Thank you very much. I'll just pass you on to Marianne.
Has there been? Sorry, just another point. Have you been supplying to anywhere that, for example, like kegs of beer to any on-sales premises?
Absolutely not. No.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Sergeant Goslin. Did you wish to address the committee, Sergeant Goslin, or are you happy with your written application?
I will address the committee, if that's okay. I'll try and keep it brief.
Thank you. Please do.
So we are in unprecedented times where businesses are adapting. We're forever receiving guidance from central government and also looking at professional bodies such as the Institute of Licensing and other persons of stature in the community with regards to licensing and taking guidance from them. This is a very, in our view, it's a very interesting business. It's not necessarily a business that was conceived by or even being thought of when the Licensing Act was created. So it's very, very difficult in some aspects to fit. I would say that with regards to a temporary event notice, and certainly a temporary event notice that isn't aligned to a licensed premises, there is not the option, as you're aware from Sarah Rogers' report, for you to attach conditions to the temporary event notice. Now, given the fact, and we've talked about it, it's probably taken up 50% of the questions and indeed the concerns raised by Marianne proactively. But we do have this concern around Challenge 25. I think, you know, I'm certainly not entirely clear on how to achieve it to a satisfactory level, given the fact that from 2 meters away, it's quite difficult to read the name on a card, to maintain that social distancing. And I think even when you're thinking about how hard it is to achieve it, we cannot, and you cannot, unfortunately, apply a condition to these temporary event notices requiring that to happen. Now, that does cause us concern. We do have, you know, Dorset Police are working very, very hard at the moment to tackle non-essential travel, and you know, there is a separate argument there, you know, with regards to essential travel and whether or not it is appropriate to be doing this. But I think, you know, under the COVID guidance, I think there is nothing preventing it from happening. But fundamentally, you cannot attach that condition. And if we can't attach that condition, it's not enforceable. Whilst the applicant can be required to uphold the licensing objectives, I do have concerns. I do have concerns with regards to the fact that this company were acting or operating without a license for a period of time. And from some of the Facebook and Instagram intelligence that comes through to us, you know, I think the quantities, I think was raised by Councillor Farquhar earlier with regards to the levels that are being delivered. I think some of the levels are quite high, and there is that risk that we do take customers' word that they are going to be sharing it amongst themselves. But there is that risk that there is going to be a further burden either on the police or indeed the NHS. And I'm not sure that at this time it's something that we should be promoting. There is a need, of course there's a need, and that need I think is being fulfilled by the numerous supermarkets and off licenses that are encouraged as part of the COVID legislation and guidance from central government to continue operating. I'm just not sure that if you were to permit this type of activity, I think we do risk there being other similar operators who may wish to, if you like, join the party, pardon the pun, at this difficult time, because there are lots of industries that are suffering. We're continuously speaking to licensees. We're speaking to pub watch members. We're speaking to all sorts of different people involved in the production and the sale of alcohol, and each of them have their own strains. So I think it is one for you, but it's clear that you're not able to put conditions on this license. And I think given the level of concern that we all have around issues such as the Challenge 25 and indeed that proxy sales aspect, then I would invite you to refuse these temporary event notices on that basis. There's nothing else for me to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. Do members have any question for Sergeant Gosling at all?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Councillor Cowsey.
Yeah, good morning, Gareth. Just wondering, are you not satisfied with the ability of Marianne as a licensee? What I'm trying to ask is, have you actually had any problems with her as a licensee at any other premises that she's been running?
No, not in relation to Marianne specifically, but I would reiterate that I think it is disappointing that this has been operated, and it's very, I think it's a very difficult point to take on when you claim to have a great deal of experience in the industry, but then something as fundamentally basic as making sure that you're operating under a license and knowing what those license conditions are, I think you rather fall at the first hurdle, and it does undermine for me the ability of the business, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading Institute of Licensing over the weekend, and they did point out, and they had an article about wholesale licenses and the confusion of that. What satisfied me was the fact that once that was pointed out, it actually ceased straight away. Have you had any other problems from other delivery type companies around Bournemouth that helps you, doesn't satisfy you? I'm taking, for example, Rapido Deliveries that do wholesale and home deliveries to premises. Have they caused any problems?
I think the key to that is that the Rapido delivery, I mean, we're not here to talk about that one, except that in relation to that one, that's aligned to a specific business, and it's operating under a premises license.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate that there is also a premises license application in for this premises at the moment that would be continuing after the COVID incidents are over. I just feel that maybe we need to give someone a chance. The Institute of Licensing are saying themselves that we need to be adaptable at this moment in time.
I think it depends on how. I've read exactly the same. I think it's dependent on how you interpret the guidance from the Institute of Licensing. I think absolutely right that we do need to encourage existing businesses who perhaps have certain restrictions, and we need to adapt to allow. So, for example, where there's perhaps it's allowing for off sales, then we should extend that to allowing for delivery. I think it's a very different beast when you don't have a license at all, and you are then looking to try and introduce something entirely new. And this is entirely new compared to the wholesale business. So I think we have to just be mindful of how far we extend that. Otherwise, we could find ourselves with a great deal of, because as you rightly stated, the premises license that's being sought is being sought not only to get the business through the COVID period of restriction, but it obviously will exist far beyond that, and that's one of the conversations that we're having with the licensing authorities at the moment.
Okay, thank you for now, Sergeant Gosling.
Thank you, Councillor Kelsey. Councillor Farquhar, did you have any questions for Sergeant Gosling at all?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Morning, Sergeant Gosling. Thank you very much for your presentation and bringing this to our attention. I still hear in your voice reservations, particularly around Challenge 25 and the nature of the fact that should this go through on a temporary events notice, which is, to my understanding, in anticipation of being granted a premises license so they can continue this business as a supplementary to their wholesale business, is there anything that this company could do which would satisfy you that the 10 license should be granted, or these set free to cover the next 3 weeks? Because I've concerns as regards under lockdown the amount of time that it will take to get a premises license, which allows for the off sales through whatever mechanism that the company comes up with through the licensing, is that in 3 weeks' time, when maybe the government says the lockdown needs to continue because of circumstances have changed, we're going to be back here to approve another set of free 10 licenses, and then maybe another set of free 10 licenses. So for this organisation to succeed and not to have copycats, because I'm just looking at their Facebook page at the moment, is there anything that we should satisfy you as the police licensing sergeant to actually say, well, the service that they're offering to people in lockdown and to be flexible would actually be happy if they satisfy these conditions. And I do appreciate your point where we can't place any conditions on them, but I do have a degree of confidence in the nature of what I've heard today, that if there was a request from the police, then it would be fulfilled.
I think it goes back to the ability to complete the Challenge 25, and also to ensure against the proxy sales aspect of it. I don't think I've heard a sort of clear, concise understanding of how that would be implemented from a distance. It is very, very difficult to achieve that entirely, and I think I would certainly want to have the confidence that each of those transactions to the door should be met with that 100% confidence that we're operating the Challenge 25 as we'd expect from behind a bar or on entry to a licensed premises. And I think we're not hearing that. We know there have been deliveries made, and it does always strike me as quite concerning when there haven't been any challenges or particular restrictions recorded in the driver delivery books. But it may well just be, as Marianne stated, that each of those people have been at a certain age. But we can only speculate on that.
You could ask the residents to leave the ID on the doorstep, then you can view it from the doorstep while they step back. That is a method. I believe you could do that without going within the 2 meters. Sorry to interrupt, Anthony. I'll just zone out. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Anthony. Councillor Farquhar, did you have any further questions at all for Sergeant Gosling?
No, Chair, and I appreciate Sergeant Gosling's candour and answers.
Thank you, Councillor Farquhar. Did any of the participants this morning have any further questions for Sergeant Gosling? If not, I've had a request to speak from Councillor Kelsey and also a request to speak from Marianne. So are there any further questions for Sergeant Gosling, please?
Yes, if I could. It's Marianne. What would make you happy? What could we implement that would make you happier than what we're not already doing?
Sergeant Gosling?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same point again, really. We're unable to condition Challenge 25 to this licence, and indeed, I would have reservations as to how Challenge 25 would be completed 100%.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. Councillor Kelsey, you wish to
Thank you, Chairman. May I ask a question of Miss Rogers, please?
Yes, certainly.
Please.
Sarah, if on a temporary event notice there is a management plan put in place, such as the one that has been offered already this morning, would that not be classed as conditions, and therefore if this was agreed, the applicant would actually have to abide by that management plan?
No, they wouldn't be able to be imposed as conditions because you can't put any conditions on the 10. However, old school, you could be seen as an undertaking. The undertakings were often imposed on liquor licenses. Yeah. They weren't necessarily conditions, but it was an understanding that they would be a bit like the police's old premises management agreement.
Yes. Yeah.
A bit like that. They often agree those, so maybe that's something that they could consider and call it a premises management agreement.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Thank you.
So can I just make a point on that? Dorset Police don't operate a PMA anymore.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. Marianne, you did put up a request to speak. Was that a question for Sergeant Gosling, or was there something else you wished to address the committee with?
That was actually the one for Sergeant Gosling, but we would like the opportunity to be able to demonstrate and show you how we can do this right. Obviously, we have got a premises license that has been being applied for at the moment, giving us the opportunity to be able to operate with the TENS. We can continue trading throughout this sort of lockdown period, a valuable service to local people that we should be sort of trying to help. And obviously look, when the premises license then continue, and although we can't set conditions against our temporary event, I wouldn't as a licensee do anything that would jeopardise my license or do things I shouldn't do. Happy to work with anything that is suggested by the police or licensing, and hopefully we can continue.
Yes, I think we understand. Right, in which case then, can I ask Sergeant Gosling, is there anything that else you'd like to address the committee with, just to sum up at all?
No, I think we've sort of gone back and forth. I don't think there's anything else to add.
Thank you, Sergeant Gosling. Marianne, Mr. Horton, is there anything else you'd like to add at all that you may have forgotten, or wish to just in summing up your application, please?
I'll leave it to Marianne.
Sorry. I think we've demonstrated, after sort of putting an alcohol management plan together and training for our drivers, that we can deliver and make sure that the 4 licensed objectives are always held at all times. And hopefully then you'll give us the opportunity to be able to continue this valuable service that people need.
Thank you, Marianne. I will now conclude the hearing. At the end of this meeting, the subcommittee will adjourn in private with the legal advisor and the clerk to deliberate. Notification of subcommittee's decision will be provided within the period of 5 working days, beginning with the day or the last day on which the hearing was held, in accordance with the regulations. The notification of decision will include information about the right of appeal as appropriate. I will now just ask the legal advisor just to explain the right of appeal. Linda, if you would, please.
Yes, there is a right of appeal.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair. We've got an RTS from Sarah Rogers.
Sorry, just noticed that. Right.
It's just a small point. Because, as Linda will explain, there is a right of appeal to this decision. Would it be possible to have the decision notice as soon as, because their appeal notice is slightly different, because obviously they'll want it in time for any TENS that if they're not allowed?
Well, once this meeting is finished, the subcommittee will deliberate and we will make our decision straight after. So I'm sure that officers will be able to forward that on as quickly as possible. We do understand the situation. Linda, please.
Yeah, there is a right of appeal for the applications that have been made today. As the chair has already advised you, they will be making their decision after this meeting, and we will get notification out to the company straight away. The written decision will then come. Well, we would like to do it within 5 days. It will definitely be done imminently. The appeal that can be made has to be made, I believe, I'm just checking this back here, I'm sorry about this, but I believe 5 days before the first event would start. So for the second and third temporary event notices which are being considered, there is no problem, but we will get the information to you so that those appeals can be made for this one as necessary. The appeal should be made to the Magistrates' Court. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. I now conclude this public part of the meeting and adjourn for deliberations. And I'd just like to say thank you very much for your attendance this morning. Thank you.